in a house right on the beach in the village where I was staying. He was more than 80 years old, and I discovered that he had been in the sea nearly every day of his life. And for me, that location is one of the most beautiful places in the entire universe. And it was quite astounding to meet someone who was doing the thing that I wish that I could do, and he'd done that for his entire life. And what struck me about this man was he was so calm, so serene, and when I thought about it, he was kind of a product of his environment. So I often wondered after meeting him, if he grew up in a let's say a poverty-stricken part of the world, in a very rough inner city neighborhood, would he be that person? So it's kind of thinking about that nature versus nurture debate. And it was also fascinating to talk to him about the village in Barbados that he grew up in, because I think his grandmother, he said, owned most of the land around that village, and she was such a lovely woman, and she just gave plots of land to everybody who needed it. So the village kind of grew up around her, and he knew everybody in the village, and they were all very tight because she had just gifted that land to everybody. So fascinating guy.
Bà là ai trong hai kiểu người này? Tuấn Anh và Thái Anh đều cùng học tiếng Anh. Khi Thái Anh đi học trung tâm không nghỉ bữa nào, Tuấn Anh Thái Anh dành ít nhất một buổi trong tuần đi săn Tây. Có ngày nắng, có ngày mưa, có ngày không câu được con cá nào, nhưng bạn không bỏ cuộc. Tuấn Anh... Tuấn Anh dậy rồi. Thái Anh chăm chỉ làm thêm để trả học phí cho trung tâm. Vì tương lai, Thái Anh cố gắng thôi. Hôm nay là một ngày đẹp trời, Tuấn Anh không đi chơi thì phí quá. Khoan!
So I got accepted? Great! When can I start? Can I see you on Monday next week?
Thank you, sir. I'm very happy to receive your offer.
Nhưng tại sao họ lại ở cùng một trình độ tiếng Anh? Bởi vì Tuấn Anh có một phương pháp đặc biệt, English Kinh cho bạn bộ công cụ đầy đủ. Sách giáo trình in màu với 2.900 từ vựng theo chủ đề. Tài khoản online theo lộ trình 24 lessons. Kể cả bạn có lười như Tuấn Anh hay lười hơn, English Kinh cũng đã có một sổ kế hoạch từng ngày thiết kế riêng cho bạn. Và email cùng hệ thống hỗ trợ học tập mỗi ngày. Bạn cũng không cần phải nói chuyện với Tây vì đã có app trí tuệ nhân tạo Goga chấm điểm và phản hồi các lỗi sai phát âm cho bạn. Chỉ cần 15 phút mỗi ngày, dù ở công viên hay ở nhà. Bất cứ lúc nào. 3 tháng với English Kinh bằng 3 năm học tiếng Anh kiểu truyền thống. English Kinh luôn có một cách ngắn hơn để chinh phục mục tiêu của bạn.
Hey guys, English King is now 51% sell off from $990 to $490 for the whole product. Click on the sign up now button to sign up.
Nghĩ như thánh, làm như người. Tập này lại tặng anh em một quả phân tích siêu hời, thật chứ không hề giật tít. Chắc cũng phải đến cả tỷ người đã từng lọt tai thông qua giảng đạo câu này. Chúa ở trong bạn, Phật ở trong bạn. Không cần liệt kê gì thêm, chỉ cần hai vị này là đủ phủ rộng lên tư duy của cả tỷ đồng loại trên khắp địa cầu này rồi, phải không? Đồng ý rằng triết lý này được phủ rất rộng, siêu rộng vì lượng tín đồ đông đảo truyền đời. Nhưng hơi đáng tiếc chút là có vẻ lượng người hiểu sâu lại rất ít. Hầu hết chúng ta mụ mị hóa những triết lý rất sâu sắc và chứa đầy logic, rõ ràng là có thể hiểu, nhưng quá nhiều người lại phải chấp nhận chọn tin. Chúng ta quên mất thứ gọi là con người này bao gồm hai phần cơ thể. Một phần rất phàm tục là cơ thể vật lý này, còn một phần khác nói thẳng với nhau luôn là siêu phàm, mang tên tâm trí. Không có cách nào để cãi được đâu anh chị em. Phần tâm trí này là siêu phàm nét căng luôn đấy. Mình nói mãi rồi. Và tất cả chúng ta đều có thể thân chứng lập tức về tính siêu phàm của tâm trí ngay và luôn, nên không có gì để cãi nhau cả. Tâm trí bạn là thứ có thể tưởng tượng ra mọi thứ, phải không? Nó có thể bay nhảy đi bất cứ đâu và đếch cần xin phép bất cứ thế lực nào. Có ai hay bất cứ thứ gì trên đời này có thể sai khiến được suy nghĩ của bạn không? Đến chính bạn đôi khi còn không thể điều khiển được nó cơ mà. Có thần thánh phương nào có thể nhốt cổ tâm trí bạn lại không? Rõ ràng là không. Nó có thể bay nhảy khắp nơi, nó có thể hình dung ra mọi thứ, nó có thể vẽ vời ra mọi cảnh tượng, và không có thứ gì nắm quyền điều khiển nó cả. Những quyền năng này là Chúa, là Phật đấy chứ đâu. Và bạn luôn có cả phần thánh lẫn phần người nằm trong hai phần cơ thể một cách rõ thấy như thế. Khỏi phải mù quáng chọn tin, việc của bạn là hiểu luôn để dùng ngay mà hưởng. Nghĩ như thánh và hành động như một con người là vì thế. Đó mới là cách sử dụng cơ thể này hiệu quả. Không thần thánh hóa cơ thể phàm tục và cũng chả dại gì phàm tục hóa tâm trí thần thánh này. Muốn hiểu rõ cách sử dụng cụ thể, thuyết phục và hiệu quả nhất thì vui lòng đọc kỹ tri thức gốc. Vẫn là mình, Sự Thật Man, tác giả bộ sách Tri Thức Gốc.
So by now you're probably thinking, just give me some quick tips and tricks. Your test might be coming up very, very soon. And we're going to do that, but in a very special way. We're going to teach you all the tips and tricks you need by telling you the story of one of our most successful students, Priyanka. Priyanka failed the speaking test 4 times in a row, and we helped her improve from a band 6 to a band 8 in just 2 weeks by sharing the 4 most important tips that you need to understand in order to improve. So let's hear Priyanka's story. Priyanka failed her speaking test 4 times in a row, and she was about to give up on her dream of moving to Canada forever. But after I gave her these 4 simple tips, she jumped from a band 6 to a band 8 in just 2 weeks. So the other day I got this email. Chris, my test is in 2 weeks and I'm going to fail again. I failed my speaking 4 times in a row and I don't know why. Help! So I replied, let's do a one-on-one speaking test. And she was right. She failed again. In fact, she got a band 6 in fluency, pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. But I could tell that if she changed just 4 simple things, she was going to get a band 8 on her next test. And when I told her this, she said, do you know my test is in 2 weeks? Yes. Do you know that if I fail this time, I'll never be able to move to Canada? Yes. Don't worry. Every band 9 student that I've worked with used these 4 simple tips. The first thing we needed to work on was her poor fluency. There were more ums and ahs in every answer than an Elon Musk interview. And Priyanka had the exact same problem Elon does when he speaks publicly. You see, when anybody speaks, they make these audible pauses, these ums and ahs. This is totally normal, and we all do this when we're thinking of what to say next. Elon is thinking of very complex things like how to launch a rocket to Mars, so he has more pauses, ums and ahs, because he's thinking a lot about what to say next. And this is exactly the same reason why Priyanka's fluency was so bad. You see, your brain is just like a computer. If you're like me, you'll have hundreds of tabs open in your browser. And what happens when you have hundreds of tabs open? Your computer slows down. So you might have the latest MacBook Pro, but if you push it too hard, it slows down. Her fluency wasn't bad, she was just trying too hard. You see, she was taught by other teachers that to get a high score on the IELTS speaking test, you need to have impressive ideas. So I asked Priyanka, what happens when you're speaking in the test and you try and think,
chào các bạn. Nếu trả lời được những câu hỏi này thì chắc chắn các bạn sẽ giỏi được tiếng Anh giao tiếp. Một là mỗi lần nói tiếng Anh, chúng ta chỉ có thể nói được một câu rồi im lặng chờ nghe người khác nói. Là vì sao? 2 là khi hỏi về từ vựng đó thì chúng ta tỏ ra là biết khá nhiều, hỏi từ gì cũng biết, nhưng mà chúng ta không thể diễn đạt được thành câu. Vì sao? Thứ 3 là ai cũng nghĩ rằng là do phát âm dở mà chúng ta không giao tiếp được tiếng Anh. Nhưng cái khó nằm ở chỗ là chúng ta không thể thốt ra được thành câu, chứ không phải nói được ra câu nhưng mà phát âm dở. Là vì sao? Thứ 4 Khi nghe người bản xứ nói đó thì chúng ta nghe được ít nhiều, và đôi khi chúng ta tâm sự rằng là chúng ta nghe được hết luôn và cảm thấy họ nói sao mà dễ quá, những cái câu họ nói sao dễ quá, mình nghe được hết. Tuy nhiên đến lượt mình thì mình không thể nói được giống như họ. Vì sao? Thứ năm là khi đi học á, chúng ta hiểu bài rất là tốt và làm bài tập, làm bài thi điểm cũng rất cao. Tuy nhiên chúng ta vẫn không nói được tiếng Anh.
Of complex ideas. And she said, I freeze and my mind goes completely blank. So why try and think of complex ideas? The truth is that nowhere in the official IELTS marking criteria does it mention complexity of ideas. In fact, ideas are not marked at all. But just telling students this information doesn't really change their behavior and their performance on test day. So I decided to show Priyanka exactly what to do. So I asked her a simple IELTS speaking question, and her answer was a complete mess. The usual ums and ahs and long pauses. So I asked her the same question again, and I asked her just to change one simple thing. And this changed everything. She answered the question with band 9 fluency. And Priyanka was completely amazed. You mean simple ideas increase my score? Yes. If you're trying to use complex ideas in the speaking test, you're making your life 10 times more difficult for no gain at all. It's like trying to eat a bowl of soup with a Swiss Army knife instead of just using a simple spoon. But just because we fixed her fluency issues doesn't mean she's going to get a high score for grammar. So let's look at that next. So we did the same thing again. I asked her a simple speaking question. How has your hometown changed since you were a child? And her first answer was long, it was complex, it had multiple different tenses and multiple different grammar structures in there. Do you think an answer like this would get a high score? Well, her answer might be complex. It might have a very wide range of grammar, but it contained multiple grammar errors. So what I did was I asked her the exact same question and I gave her some advice and told her to change just one thing. And here is her answer. My hometown has changed dramatically since I was a child. It used to be a small village, but it has grown into a bustling city with new opportunities. Despite the fast pace, the sense of community has remained strong. Now, this example only has two of the most basic tenses in the English language. It is much, much simpler, but it contained 0 errors. And to get a band 7 or above on your IELTS speaking test, 50% or more of your sentences must have 0 errors. To put it simply, the more sentences you produce with no grammatical errors, the higher your score. So which answer do you think would get a higher score? The one that has a very wide range of grammar, but lots of mistakes, or the simpler one with 0 mistakes? But like many of you, Priyanka was still very worried and she asked me, what about range of grammar? Aren't I being judged on both range and accuracy? Well, in the test, you know the way the examiner asks you a range of different questions. Well, they're doing that to test the range of your grammar. Just by answering each question naturally and appropriately, you'll naturally use a range of different grammar structures and tenses. All you have to do is just answer the question. So in less than 5 minutes, we had fixed 50% of Priyanka's problems. But she's still worried about her vocabulary and her pronunciation. She'd been told by all of her old teachers that she needed to use complex vocabulary and that her accent was a problem and this was going to lower her pronunciation score. So I said, listen, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is you've just fixed your grammar and your fluency issues in less than 5 minutes and you're probably going to get a very high score. The bad news is you're going to have to completely change everything about your vocabulary. And her reaction was very predictable. Like nearly every student I tell this to, they say, but my old teacher told me that I need to make all of my vocabulary complex. And this is 100% true. Most teachers, especially on YouTube, teach you that complex words equal a higher score. But we teach students something completely different. Think of vocabulary as tools in a toolkit. Each tool helps you do a job. Each word you know helps you discuss different topics. This tool helps you talk about your hometown, And this tool helps you talk about where you'd like to live in the future. Band 8 and 9 students have enough words, enough tools, so that they can handle any question or any topic. You see, using fancy vocabulary is like buying a very expensive fancy tool when all you need is a hammer to hit in a nail. The truth is that the vast majority of students that we work with have enough vocabulary already to get the score that they need. But because they've been taught to use very high-level complex words, they make lots of mistakes, and this actually lowers their score. It's like a band 7 is a weight that they can easily lift already. But instead of just lifting that weight, they try and lift a weight way heavier that they're not capable of lifting, and they end up dropping it on their head. So did Priyanka just answer some questions and use simple vocabulary and live happily ever after and get the score that she needed? No. Like many students, she got very angry with me for criticizing her old teachers. She told me that this was going to lead to failure, and she ended the call.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? If you're checking your phone, stop that. Instead, try this technique from the mind science pioneer, Jose Silva. You see, when we're awake, our brain is at what is called beta, the waking level. But when we wake up in the morning, our brain is actually at a different altered state of mind called the alpha frequency. At the alpha frequency, you can command your body to heal itself. At the alpha frequency, you can program your subconscious to remove bad beliefs or even take on new habits. Some even suggest that at alpha, your intuition is stronger. This is the state that people often spend years of meditation to train themselves to get into. But it turns out you're in alpha for the first 5 minutes when you wake up. The problem is most people get out of it by checking their phone. So put your phone down, go brush your teeth, go pee if you need to, get back to bed, sit up, and here's the technique Jose suggests you do. Sit up in bed and count backwards from 100 to 1. This will take you about 3 to 4 minutes. And as you count backwards, feel yourself relax. Because you're counting, you keep your mind active so you don't fall asleep. Now, once you're at the alpha level, you're effectively at a really deep level of meditation. This is where you can apply different techniques such as communicating with your body, self-healing, Reiki, creative visualization, and everything is enhanced. Do this every day for the first 10 days. Now, for the next 10 days, you count from 50 to 1, and you'll be able to go as deep. For the next 10 days, 25 to 1. Then on day 31 to 40, you're counting only from 10 to 1. If you do this every day for 40 days, you train your brain to be able to go to alpha anytime, not just in the morning, but anytime you want by simply counting backwards from 10 to 1. Just like a hypnotist can get you to sink into a different state, at this point, you can go really deep in meditation in 10 seconds. But it's what you do at the alpha level that's where magic happens. Now, the Silva Method has become one of America's most powerful personal growth programs, and videos I've done in the Silva Method have become some of the most viral videos on the internet, and you're going to see why.
Helen Hansel was able to win any competition she took part in. She was known as the contest queen because she had won 7 trips to Paris, boats, houses. She would basically take part in any sweepstake she read about, any contest, and she would just win. That made my documentary crew, and I asked Helen, how do you do that? And she spoke about this thing called the Silva technique. Helen, you see, was Jose Silva's former PR manager. She had the benefit of learning closely from that man. Now, Jose Silva was a radio repairman who lived in the border town of Laredo, Texas in the 1940s. He had 10 kids, and his kids were not doing very well in school. Now, Jose Silva had a crazy idea. You see, he had served in the US Army, and he was fascinated by the psychological questions that the Army psychologists would ask new recruits. So he decided to look at psychology and then look at what he knew about radio repair and figure out how he could change the mindset and the brains of his kids so they could do better in school. As a radio repairman, he knew that if you reduce the resistance of a wire, more
So a few days go past and I don't hear anything from Priyanka. Finally, I check my email. She's booked another one-on-one speaking test with me. But at this point, her test is in 24 hours the next day. She's not just worried, she's completely freaking out. So I asked her a simple question. You've failed 4 times before. Do you think doing the same thing that you did those 4 times is going to lead to success? You see, all these speaking tips and tricks that you'll find online are just ways of you trying to trick the examiner into thinking that you're good enough and that you deserve a higher score than you're really capable of. We have a saying here in Ireland, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. The truth is, is that you are good enough to get the score that you need. You just have to use the English level and the words and the grammar and the vocabulary that you already have and show the examiner your real, genuine English level. So finally, Priyanka said, let's do a practice test. Let's do it your way. Her ideas were simple but relevant, her grammar was appropriate and accurate, and her vocabulary was wide-ranging enough that she could talk about any topic I asked her about, and she was able to speak accurately and fluently. But this just left her pronunciation. If she couldn't fix her pronunciation issues, it doesn't matter how good the rest of it was. She would still fail to get the score that she needed. And Priyanka's big pronunciation problem was that she spoke too quickly. If you speak too quickly, it is really difficult for the examiner to understand every word that you're saying. And if the examiner doesn't understand every word, they give you a low score. But in that final one-on-one session, her pronunciation popped up from a band 6 to a band 8 without me giving her any advice at all. She changed one thing without me telling her what to do. You see, once she answered each question naturally and used the grammar and vocabulary she already knew how to use, she relaxed. This meant that she made fewer mistakes, was less nervous, and relaxed even more. The more relaxed she was, the better her pronunciation. By fixing everything and being able to speak to the examiner in the same way that she would speak to a friend or a colleague, she slowed everything down. I could understand 100% of what she was saying, and she instantly improved her pronunciation. And a result, on test day, she got an amazing band 8. She moved to Canada, she found a better job, she earned more money, and lived happily ever after. And she never had to think of the silly IELTS test ever again.
Imagine how it would feel if you could learn to play worship guitar like a pro in just 10 days. Listen, I know that's...
In this video, I'll reveal the most common sentence patterns used by Band 7, 8 and 9 students. We've used AI to analyze thousands of Band 7, 8 and 9 performances so that you can learn from them and improve your score. We'll also be playing a little game throughout the video, and if you get enough points, you'll win a very special prize at the end. So let's start off with question 1. Which of these sentence patterns is the most common for Band 7, 8 and 9 students in part 1 of the speaking test? I'm a... My role entails, in my professional capacity, and I am responsible for. Final answer? The correct answer is A. I'm a. So when asked, do you work or study, which is the most common question that you'll get in part 1 of the speaking test, the most common response from Band 7, 8 and 9 students is simply, I'm a teacher, worker, whatever you do. But isn't that a little bit too simple for a Band 7, 8 and 9 student? Well, let's continue and we'll explain later in the video. Question 2. Which of these sentence patterns is the most common for Band 7, 8 and 9 students in part 1 of the test? I originate from, I hail from, I'm from, I am a product of. Final answer? And the correct answer is, I'm from. So like question 1, all of the wrong answers are technically correct. The English is absolutely fine. But in general, students that try and use those more advanced options tend to get a lower score. I know that doesn't make any sense right now. Continue to watch the video and we'll explain how that makes sense and how to improve your score. Question 3. Which of these sentence patterns is the most common for Band 7, 8 and 9 students in part 1? I prefer, I like, I normally, I live in. Final answer? And the correct answer is, I like. But these are actually all very, very common sentence patterns in part 1 of the speaking test. We use I like and I prefer to discuss things that we like doing. We use I normally to talk about daily routines. And we use I live in to talk about the accommodation that we live in or maybe talk about where we're from. Again, you're probably extremely surprised that these high-level students use such simple language. It must get more complicated when they start talking in part 2 of the test. Let's move on to part 2 of the test to find out which of these sentence patterns is most used by band 7, 8 and 9 students in part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. We went to, we were going, they had gone, we had been going. So this is a tricky one. Would you like to phone a friend? We use things called narrative tenses to tell stories about past experiences. And looking at these 4 options, these are all narrative tenses. One is past simple, one is past continuous, one is past perfect, and one is past perfect continuous. Any of these could be used to tell a story about the past, but the most common tense among these is past simple. So I'm going to go for we went to. Final answer? Correct. So now that we know that it's very common to use narrative tenses in part 2, let's look at how to use them in question number 5. Which of these sentences is incorrect? I went to London for 3 years. I was watching TV when the phone rang. He realized he left his passport at home. I'd been walking for hours before we found a restaurant. Final answer? And the correct answer is I went to London for 3 years. This is very, very important because it shows a crucial point about part 2 of the speaking test. It is not about which sentences you use or the range of different tenses that you use. It is about choosing a sentence that is appropriate and accurate. So in part 2, you'll be given a range of different bullet points. And the last bullet point, the most common one, the most popular one, will look like this and explain how you felt about that thing. So let's move on to question 6, all about how you feel. Which of these sentence patterns would get the highest score? I felt sad. I was over moon. I have a feeling of overwhelming joy. Words cannot describe the depths of my feelings. So that's a tricky one. Do you want to ask the audience? Audience, please pick the correct answer. And if you want to play along at home, in the comments, write A, B, C, or D. So let's look at the results. 49% think that it's D, 19% C, 17% A, and 15% think it's B. So 49% of you are wrong. It's wrong for 2 reasons. One, you didn't actually answer the question. That's not actually saying how you feel about anything. And examiners are trained to spot memorized answers. This sounds like a memorized answer, so you would actually get a lower score rather than a higher score. 19% of you are wrong because this is simply the wrong verb tense. Remember, it's not just whether the sentence is appropriate, but it also has to be accurate. 15% of you are wrong because this is simply inaccurate. It is wrong to say, I was over a moon. It is, I was over the moon. If you say to the examiner, I was over a moon, again, you are lowering your score. You're not increasing your score because you used some magic idiom. And well done to the 17% of you playing at home who got it correct. It answers the question and it is grammatically accurate. It is better.
Bạn đang muốn kinh doanh nhưng không biết bắt đầu từ đâu. Bạn đang muốn thoát khỏi công việc hiện tại. Vậy thì đừng đi tìm một công việc khác nữa. Bản thân mình đã chuyển việc rất nhiều lần. Và thực sự thì mọi thứ chuyển việc xong ấy, thì bạn sẽ thấy nó giống như là một cái vòng tròn. Và bạn sẽ lại rơi vào trạng thái của ngày hôm nay trong một ngày ở tương lai. Nếu vậy thì tại sao không thử cho mình một cơ hội mới? Nếu đây là điều bạn tìm kiếm thì video này dành cho bạn. Xin giới thiệu bạn, mình tên là Giang, mình đến từ thành phố Hồ Chí Minh xinh đẹp. Hiện tại thì mình đã bắt đầu công việc kinh doanh online này khoảng 2 năm rưỡi trước và mình đã chính thức nghỉ việc cách đây 3 tháng. Mình đang tận hưởng một cuộc đời tự do nhất mà mình đã có. Và bạn biết không, chúng ta không thể nào đánh đổi một công việc 8 tiếng để lấy một công việc 8 hoặc là 12 tiếng nữa. Phải không nào? Mình đã từng kinh doanh theo phương pháp truyền thống và thực sự với bạn là nó còn vất vả hơn cái việc chúng ta làm ở văn phòng rất là nhiều. Nếu chúng ta làm ở văn phòng từ 8 giờ sáng đến 5 giờ chiều và sau đó chúng ta có một buổi tối dành cho gia đình, thì nếu chúng ta bắt đầu một quán cà phê, một cửa hàng ăn uống, một mô hình kinh doanh truyền thống thì chúng ta có khi phải làm nhiều hơn như vậy. Chúng ta phải lo tất cả mọi thứ từ A đến Z. Nhưng trong mô hình kinh doanh này, đặc biệt với sự giúp đỡ của AI và hệ thống phiếu bán hàng tự động, nó sẽ chăm sóc khách hàng của bạn mọi lúc, mọi nơi, ngay cả lúc mà bạn đang ngủ. Với cái công việc mà được tự động hóa 80%, bạn chỉ làm 20% như vậy thì mới có thể rút ngắn khoảng thời gian làm việc của bạn từ 8 giờ sáng xuống, từ 8 tiếng xuống 2 tiếng. Và một điều đặc biệt nữa là sau quá trình thời gian mà chúng ta phải chủ động kinh doanh thì nó sẽ trở thành một cái nguồn thu nhập thụ động cho bạn. Bạn có muốn rằng là mình sẽ cố gắng, thực sự cố gắng trong vòng 2-3 năm hoặc là 5 năm đầu, sau đó mình có thể nghỉ hưu với một cái nguồn income thụ động hay không? Chúng ta không thể nào làm mãi một cái gì đấy, đúng không? Nếu chúng ta làm mãi một cái gì đấy, ví dụ như công việc hiện tại, thì bạn cũng sẽ có lúc bạn sẽ cảm thấy ôi, tôi không muốn làm nó nữa. Vậy thì sao? Vậy thì nếu mà bạn phải chuyển sang một công việc mới, bạn phải kinh doanh một công việc mới và bạn phải bắt đầu nó lại từ đầu. Và liệu chúng ta có bao nhiêu năng lượng, có bao nhiêu nhiệt huyết để bắt đầu lại từ đầu? Thì tại sao chúng ta không bắt đầu một cái mà chúng ta biết rằng sau 3 năm, 5 năm nếu chúng ta không còn muốn làm nữa thì nó vẫn cho bạn một nguồn thu nhập thụ động. Và lúc đó bạn có thể dành thời gian cho gia đình, chăm sóc bố mẹ, chăm sóc con cái, hoặc là đơn giản chỉ nằm dài trên bờ biển. Nếu tương lai như vậy là những gì mà bạn mong ước, nếu bạn thực sự khát khao thì hãy click vào đường link này và dành cho mình 1 tiếng rưỡi để xem một cái video nó sẽ hướng dẫn bạn. Hoặc nếu trong trường hợp bạn muốn tìm hiểu thông tin nhiều
than all of the others, therefore. So let's move on to the final round where we're going to look at part 3 of the speaking test. Part 3 is the most challenging, it is the most difficult, it has the most difficult questions and requires the most complex answers of the whole test. So question 7, what was the most common sentence pattern for band 7, 8 and 9 students in part 3 of the speaking test? I totally agree. Not necessarily. It's possible that, in my opinion. So all of these are very, very common, but let's look at what they do. So I totally agree. We use that functional language to do the job of agreeing with someone. Not necessarily. Again, the function of that sentence pattern is to disagree with someone. It's possible that the function of that is slightly different. It's possible that is to consider someone else's opinion. And in my opinion, you are expressing your opinion. And band 7, 8 and 9 students use this type of language, this functional language all the time because it helps them do things. They're not thinking about the most advanced pattern to use or the most high level structure to use. They're thinking, what do I want to say? And what sentence pattern helps me do that? In other words, they're just solely focused on clearly answering the question. And the most common one is, in my opinion, because you will be giving your opinion a lot. But you're not done there. You can't just give lots and lots of opinions and get a high score. You must back it up with explaining your point of view. Question 8. Which of these is the most common way band 7, 8 and 9 students explain things? Like, in other words, that is to say that, because. Now, all of these are actually fine to use. All of them are correct. All of them can be used to explain why you believe something is true or why you have that opinion. But the most common way is because. Too simple? Well, no, because is the most common way native English speakers use. That's the most common sentence pattern that they use to explain things. Would a native English speaker get a low score because they use everyday normal English like because? So will you get a band 9? We're down to the final question, question 9. So you've stated your opinion, you've explained that opinion, but you need to go even further. And there are a few options open for you to help you expand your part 3 answers even more. Question 9. Which of these sentence patterns is the most common way for band 7, 8 and 9 students to expand their answer even further in part 3? On other hand, for example, to sum up, in nutshell, you're probably going to need a 50-50 for that one.
Growing a startup is tough. You have limited resources and a lot to do. You're thinking about how to best apply your team's time, maintain infrastructure, or build custom tooling. You're constantly balancing between moving fast and keeping costs under control. Our engineers have kept this top of mind when they designed Google Cloud to be simple to use, so it's faster and easier for you to get things done. Let's break down the 4 key reasons top startups work with us. Number 1 is speed. Streamlining application delivery gets you to market faster, increasing growth and giving you a competitive edge. Startups are choosing to build with Google Cloud's state-of-the-art containers and developer tools like GKE and Cloud Run to get from code to production in record time while reducing or eliminating infrastructure maintenance. Fintech startup Current told us, moving to Google Cloud improved our time to market for app development by 400%. We can iterate quickly, find issues, and redeploy. Second is intelligence. Data is crucial to driving innovation and tailored experiences. But it can be hard for startups to fully take advantage of it. Google's Data Cloud includes tools popular with startups like BigQuery, Looker, and Google's AI services. It spans across startup needs across all stages of growth. Brazilian startup Jovicam said, "We were able to cut processing times for automatic speech by 93%, from 5 minutes to 20 seconds. Next up is savings. Cloud is often the biggest expense for startups. To reduce costs, we've built in the ability to forecast and optimize spend with AI-powered recommendations in the console and scale down to 0 when resources are not needed. Plus, our new Tau VMs that run startup-loved containerized workloads have shown a 42% higher price performance than VMs from other leading public cloud vendors. Startups like GoCardless say, our costs are down by around 25%, even though we are doing much more with our system than previously. Finally, we are committed to a partnership for growth that goes beyond just your cloud infrastructure and is powered by a holistic approach from Google. We help our startups overcome challenges through personalized training and mentorship and tailored financial, business, and technical support. Swit told us, we learned what a real partnership looks like. Whenever we had questions, whether business related or technical, we knew we had the strongest partner in the world to ask. Learn more and apply to our startup program at cloud.google.com/startup.
Hello, and welcome to the WVBS Online Bible School. My name is Russell Hafner, and I am the director of the school. Thank you for your interest in studying the Bible. This school is designed to provide you with an online, comprehensive, in-depth study of the Bible for free. That's right, there are no tuition fees. Also, all courses are studied at your own pace. The courses have no official start time or end time, and you will have continual access to the videos. Therefore, you can watch them on your schedule and at your convenience 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. The lessons in the school are pure non-denominational teaching based on an accurate drawing out or extracting from the Bible what it teaches, not reading into the text what someone might think it teaches. The courses cover every book in the Bible, plus 4 additional subjects which help you in your
Then the Lord said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation." But what is the first word that the Lord says to Noah? Does he say, "Go into the ark"? No. He says, "Come into the ark." What does that indicate? That indicates that God is inviting him to come into the ark with him. That God is going to be with him in the ark. That's important. That is a lot of confidence that he is giving to Noah. Yes, he and his family, they There are several things that we'll be covering.
Bible School. To God be the glory.
Welcome to this study of the book of Genesis. Generally, this is one of the very first courses or first books that is studied if you would go to school in a formal situation. But it's an exciting book. And because it's also the very first book that we'll be studying, there are several things that we'll be covering here at the beginning that aren't necessarily absolutely related.
Your understanding of the scriptures, such as how we got the Bible, how to interpret the Bible, Christian evidences, and Greek. Now let me send you over to Al Washington, who is one of the instructors in the school.
Hello, and welcome to the recording studio for the WVBS Online Bible School. The school is designed for anyone who wants a focused, organized, and thorough study of the Bible. The level of work required is equal to, and even far superior to, what many Bible colleges or universities provide. All the instructors in the school have had years of study, and they have prepared themselves thoroughly to teach these subjects. Each teacher is presently, or has been, an instructor in a Bible training school. They are among the finest teachers available today. Any graduate of the school will be fully qualified to teach the Bible to others. If this interests you, click on the link to go to the school website. When you click on the link, you will see that there are 3 levels of study. First, you may choose to be an auditing student. This will give you complete access to all the videos, and you will be able to take the courses in any order you desire. Auditing students are not required to do any of the class assignments, and therefore do not receive a certificate for the course videos they have watched. Second, you may choose to be an informal student. As an informal student, you will not only have access to all the videos, but you will also receive online viewing access to the corresponding course notes, books, and exams. Informal students are expected to view all the videos and complete all class assignments, including term papers and online exams. When you complete a course with a passing grade, you will receive a certificate for that course. Informal students are allowed to take the courses in any order they desire. Third, if you choose to enroll as a formal student, you will have access to all the videos, and you will also receive online viewing access to the course notes, books, and exams. And you will be expected to complete all class assignments, including term papers and online exams. As a formal student, you are required to take the courses in the designated course schedule order. You will be given course certificates for each course you successfully complete, and you will be awarded a graduation diploma when all 45 courses are completed. Click the link to the school website now to choose the level of study you desire. Now let me send you back to the director of the school.
I invite you to investigate for yourself what we offer. Please feel free to explore the website and view some of the sample class videos to determine if the school is what you are seeking. I know you will find the school to be a benefit to you and your study of God's Word. Thank you for considering the WVBS Online Bible School. You can click on the link now to be taken to the school website.
Do you want to take a 50-50? Computer, please take away 2 wrong answers. So they've got rid of to sum up. Why is to sum up wrong? Well, again, think back to what we talked about functional language. To sum up is to summarize something. It is actually quite rare for high-level students to summarize what they're saying in part 3. So to sum up isn't technically wrong. It is just quite rare for a student to do that. In nutshell, again, we would use that to summarize something. We don't normally summarize things, as we just said, but in nutshell is wrong because it is inaccurate. It is not in nutshell, it's in a nutshell. So that leaves us with one wrong answer and one correct answer. Will you get them all right? On other hand, is good. Showing the other side of the argument is one of the best ways that you can expand your answer even further in part 3. So you talk about one side of the argument and then you talk about the other side of the argument, if you can think of it. So it's good, but it's not right. Because it's not on other hand, it is on the other hand. Again, this is why a lot of students mess up, because they go and memorize a bunch of sentence patterns before the test, and that's why you clicked on the video, isn't it? And they use them incorrectly. So the correct answer is, for example, which is just a nice, simple way of giving an example. So if you use the sentences, the sentence patterns in this video, are you guaranteed to get a band 9? Absolutely not. The reason why you clicked on this video is because you want to memorize things. Many of you have been brought up in education systems where you have been taught that memorization is a skill. Unfortunately, IELTS is not a memorization test. It is an English communication test. Memorization is the opposite of clear communication. The key for the speaking test is to understand what type of questions might come up, and then have appropriate and accurate, simple, correct ways of dealing with all the most common questions. That is why Band 7, 8 and 9 students use simple language.
Most people think that the secret to IELTS speaking success is learning how to do a few things really well. But after helping thousands of students get a Band 9 in IELTS speaking, I can tell you the opposite is actually true. The real secret is Band 9 students avoid traps set for them by IELTS speaking examiners. And if you fall for them, you will fail.
This video will show you what those traps are, how to spot them, and how to avoid them so that you can massively increase your score. And at the end of the video, I'm going to reveal the biggest IELTS speaking secret that's contained in one of my favorite movies. Understanding this secret has done more to help my students get a Band 9 than anything else. And you can learn it.
I couldn't believe that a learning game worked so well in real life. It was over the holidays and we were making Christmas cookies, and my daughter Chloe was of course getting hungry. She asked when we were going to be doing dinner, and I told her a little bit later because it was only 3 o'clock. She turned to look at the wall behind her and a clock, and then turned back to me and said, "So in 2.5 hours?" I was shocked. Chloe just turned 6 and she just started 1st grade. Then I remembered that over the summer, we signed Chloe up for Adapted Mind, an interactive monster math game, and she was able to try 1st grade math early. They have time-telling lessons and she must have remembered them. I knew the material was great, but I couldn't believe that this learning game worked so well for real life. If you've got kids, you're gonna wanna try Adapted Mind out. The best part is that it's free for the first 30 days, so you have plenty of time to watch your children apply what they've learned to real life. Start your child's monster math adventure today.
Fear is a killer, and fear is out to kill you. You probably heard the phrase, frozen with fear.
Instantly. The first trick they play is really sneaky, and it's the same trick my dad used to play when he worked here as a chef. Young chefs would come into his kitchen and ask him for a job. Sure, my dad would say, "Come back tomorrow, cook me something. If I like it, you can have a job." And just before they left, he'd say, "Is there anything you do not like to cook?" And when they arrived the next day for the cooking demonstration, he'd ask them to cook the thing they hated. So what has my sneaky father got to do with IELTS speaking? If you look online for topics that will definitely come up on test day, you'll find these 3 topics. But if you look at the official Cambridge questions, you'll find very unusual topics that you weren't expecting. You see, when IELTS examiners ask about your home or your work or your hometown, they often get answers like this. I am over the moon that you asked me about my hometown. It is only once in a blue moon that I get to talk about a topic that is so close to my heart. There are a plethora of reasons why one would enjoy my hometown. Let's talk first about the 18th century architecture. But if the examiner was to ask them about a topic they weren't expecting, such as wigs, the examiner might hear an answer like this. I don't know anything about wigs. I've never worn a wig in my entire life. And things are going to get much worse for this student because the examiners are trained to spot memorized answers. And what they will do if they think that you are giving memorized answers, for example, about your hometown, they will ask you more and more difficult questions on unusual topics. And here's the scary part. The examiner has your memorized answer and your answer to the questions you weren't expecting. They will not base their score on this answer. They will base their score on this answer alone. Because as my father used to say, a chef is only as good as their worst dish, not their best dish. Your memorized answers are not your real level. Your real speaking level is dealing with questions you were not expecting. So if you do get an unusual question on test day, answer it like this. No, I've never worn a wig. I think that people who wear wigs sound and look ridiculous. I think they really just do it for attention or to be funny, which isn't funny at all, to be honest. Now, if you thought the examiners were sneaky in part 1, you're really going to hate them after I reveal their sneaky trap in part 3 of the test. Now, before I tell you what it is, let me tell you why they do it. Because once you understand the why, you'll be able to spot it immediately and deal with it much more easily. So when I was a kid in primary school, I really struggled academically. I couldn't even write my own name properly. I couldn't understand most of the lessons and I wasn't allowed to sit with the other kids. But despite all this, I was able to eventually graduate from one of the best law schools in the world. You see, when I did a test, I got all the easy questions wrong, but the few really difficult questions at the end of the test that no other students could get correct, I would always get those correct. And this is exactly what the examiners are trained to do in part 3 of the speaking test. If they believe that you are at one of the lower bands, let's say a band 4 or a band 5, they will ask you quite easy questions like these ones. But if they think that you deserve one of the higher bands, a band 7, 8, or even 9, they will ask you more and more difficult questions. Notice how in the book here, the questions get more and more difficult. But the key here is how you react to these more difficult questions. These questions will come at the very end of the speaking test when you are stressed, you are tired, and you just want the test to end. And when the examiner asks these questions, often students will give answers like, yes, I don't know. The thing you have to remember with these questions is the examiner is testing you. They are testing, are you capable of answering these band 7, 8, and 9 questions? Because they have to separate out the band 7s from the band 8s from the band 9s. One of the ways they're trained to do that is ask these really, really difficult questions and then see how you react to them. So what if you know nothing about the topic or you just find that question really, really challenging? Are you going to automatically get a low score? No, let me show you how to cope with those questions. So if I was doing the test and I got this question and I know nothing about this topic, I am a complete idiot when it comes to this topic, I could say something like this. To be honest, I don't know anything about this topic. I'm not from India and I don't know much about cooking, but if I had to give an answer, it's very difficult to predict the future. But what I would say is maybe AI will change how the restaurants take orders and how they deliver the food to their customers. But that's just a complete guess. Now, is that the best answer in the world? No, but it is much better than, and by attempting an answer and telling the examiner what I think about that topic, even though I know nothing about it, I have indicated to the examiner that I am good enough to deal with those questions, and they might then steer the conversation to a topic that I'm more comfortable with, and then I can really show them how good I am. Now, the last trap is the sneakiest of them all, and it's got to do with how they test your vocabulary. There are thousands of words in the English language, and the examiners only have between 10 and 15 minutes to test your ability to use English vocabulary. So they came up with a genius way of testing it in around 10 minutes. See, some words we use to talk about this topic, some words this topic, and some words this topic. But if we try to use these words to talk about this topic, it doesn't work. These are called topic-specific words, and we can use them to talk about different topics. Knowing this information is crucial for two reasons. First, the examiners are trained to ask you a range of different topics on test day, so that you can't just memorize a list of band 9 words and put them into every answer and cheat the test in that way. Secondly, the examiners are more impressed with a simple, topic-specific word than a more complex word that doesn't really help you answer the question. This is why so many students fail the test when they were expecting to get a really high score, because they memorized lists of band 9 words. And this is why so many of our VIP students get a band 7, 8, and 9, not by memorizing lists of high-level band 9 words, but using the simple topic-specific words they already know.
It's actually impossible. It's actually possible to avoid 100% of the traps that might come up in the speaking test. Not just the speaking test, but all areas of the IELTS test.
The first time I had my interview was the first time I even came to Bristol, and the campus was just incredible.
It's a practical university. It's about degrees where you can go into industry afterwards and you can gain experience while you're here.
The environment here is social, it's exciting, it's diverse, it's multicultural, and I like the energy, I like the spirit.
The brilliant thing about UE Bristol for our course, it's got 100% employability rate, which is amazing. So I know that once I graduate, I have a job.
Bristol's a really vibrant city, and there's lots of interesting institutions and companies in the area, and we have really strong links with them, and we always look for opportunities to give our students experience so that they're really well prepared for industry after they graduate.
UE Bristol was different from other universities.
Every part of the IELTS test, reading, listening, writing, has traps contained within it. But there is one way that you can spot all of them and avoid all of them and massively increase your score. In the movie Catch Me If You Can, Leonardo DiCaprio plays a criminal that is being chased by FBI man Tom Hanks. Leo's character plays a criminal who pretends to be an airline pilot and a doctor and a lawyer. He also steals money by making fake checks and stealing credit cards. The crucial scene in this movie comes when Tom Hanks asks Leo, how did he fake passing the bar exam? The bar exam is an exam all lawyers have to take before they can become a lawyer. It is one of the most difficult tests in the entire world. And Tom Hanks can't figure out how a criminal, how a con man would be able to fake passing this test. And here's how he did it.
I didn't cheat. I studied for 2 weeks and I passed.
You see, he didn't need to fake becoming a doctor or a lawyer or an airline pilot. He didn't need to steal money to become rich. He was already talented and smart and intelligent enough to do all of these things without cheating, without stealing. He just needed to stop cheating. All of the IELTS traps are used to catch cheaters. Like Leo's character, most IELTS students don't cheat because they are bad people. They cheat because they lack confidence, they are scared that they're going to fail, and then they get desperate and resort to listening to these tricks and cheats and hacks. And the most fascinating thing is this movie is a true story. He now actually works for the FBI, and credit card companies have paid him millions of dollars to help prevent future criminals taking advantage of the system. If you believe that you're good enough and you don't cheat, the examiner is going to give you your real score on test day. And you'll be rewarded with a new life in a new country, getting paid way more than you currently are. You are more than capable of doing that. You just have to show them.
Made it across, didn't die.
I'm going to give you the most common idioms used by real Band 9 students. And for each idiom, I'll also give you a Band 9 sample answer. We've helped hundreds of students get a Band 9 in the IELTS speaking test, and we took all of their practice tests and analysed them using AI and identified the most common idioms that they used. And at the end of the video, we're going to show you the number of idioms the Band 9 students actually use. Hint, it is much, much lower than you think, and reveal the biggest mistake that students make when it comes to idioms so that you can avoid that and improve your score. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first idiom is to bite the bullet. Bite as in to bite something, and a bullet, something that you put in a gun, to bite the bullet. What to bite the bullet means is to do something difficult or unpleasant with bravery. So you don't want to do something very, very difficult or unpleasant, but you do it anyway. You're brave and you do it. So where does this come from? Well, this actually comes from the battlefield, from war. So many, many years ago, if you had a wound, if you were shot or stabbed or whatever it is, and you needed a very unpleasant procedure from the doctor, there wasn't any anesthetic, there wasn't any painkillers. So what they would do is they would give you a bullet and tell you to bite down on that bullet. I don't know if this helps or not, but that is where it comes from. And understanding where idioms comes from really helps you remember them and use them properly. So let's pick a real question and I'll answer it and use to bite the bullet in the answer. I didn't really want to study law, but I was the only one in my family ever to get high grades in their A-levels. So my mother sat me down one day and said, it's either medicine or law. So I went to a hospital on work experience and fainted when I saw the sight of blood. I'm too squeamish for medicine. I'm going to give you the most common idioms used by real Band 9 students. And for each idiom, I'll also give you a Band 9 sample answer. We've helped hundreds of students get a Band 9 in the IELTS speaking test, and we took all of their practice tests and analysed them using AI and identified the most common idioms that they used. And at the end of the video, we're going to show you the number of idioms the Band 9 students actually use. Hint, it is much, much lower than you think, and reveal the biggest mistake that students make when it comes to idioms so that you can avoid that and improve your score. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first idiom is to bite the bullet. Bite as in to bite something, and a bullet, something that you put in a gun, to bite the bullet. What to bite the bullet means is to do something difficult or unpleasant with bravery. So you don't want to do something very, very difficult or unpleasant, but you do it anyway. You're brave and you do it. So where does this come from? Well, this actually comes from the battlefield, from war. So many, many years ago, if you had a wound, if you were shot or stabbed or whatever it is, and you needed a very unpleasant procedure from the doctor, there wasn't any anesthetic, there wasn't any painkillers. So what they would do is they would give you a bullet and tell you to bite down on that bullet. I don't know if this helps or not, but that is where it comes from. And understanding where idioms comes from really helps you remember them and use them properly. So let's pick a real question and I'll answer it and use to bite the bullet in the answer. I didn't really want to study law, but I was the only one in my family ever to get high grades in their A-levels. So my mother sat me down one day and said, it's either medicine or law. So I went to a hospital on work experience and fainted when I saw the sight of blood. I'm too squeamish for medicine, so I decided just to bite the bullet and study law. Now, some common collocations of this idiom are to bite the bullet. It's normally to bite the bullet, not bite the bullet. I decided to bite the bullet. I chose to bite the bullet and I had to.
Some people have it rough, while Theophilus Bezelbottom has it easy. Not an inch of his muscle does Theo have to move to live a life of extravagance. You name it, he has it. You can't blame him. He's a man of indulgence. But his life of lavishness may soon come to a halt. His uncles, Throckmorton and Aloysius, can change his fate if he's not willing to accept new challenges that will push him beyond his limit. Could this be the end of an era of opulence in the life of Theo? Or can he get away from it and land on both of his feet? If Theo would not pick up his pace, he either has everything to lose or play on what he has. But being the wise guy that he is, Theo prevails with his master plan, not without the help of a tenacious beauty.
Bite the bullet. And the correct pronunciation of this is to stress or emphasize bite. Bite the bullet, not bite the bullet. The next idiom is a piece of cake. A piece of cake means that something is very easy. And we often use this when we are reassuring someone who is worried about something. So if my little boy was worried about his maths test, I would say, don't worry, it's going to be a piece of cake. You don't always use it to help someone or give advice to someone. We normally talk about it just when we are describing something that is simple, that is easy to do. Where does this come from? Well, there's quite a debate about where this comes from, but the easiest way to think about a piece of cake is that it's pleasant. It is easy to eat a piece of cake. It is a very nice thing. You might also hear the idiom, it was a cake walk. That means walking around looking at cakes. A very pleasant, nice, easy thing to do. To be honest, compared to practicing law, teaching English is a piece of cake. To give you a concrete example, to qualify as a lawyer takes around 6 years of study and work experience. To qualify as an English teacher only takes 6 weeks. The pay obviously isn't as good, but the students, the clients are much nicer and friendlier. A common mistake that we hear a lot with a piece of cake is to drop the article, to just say, it's piece of cake. If you make that mistake, it's not going to improve your IELTS score, it's going to lower your IELTS score. So don't just pick these and use them without really learning them properly. And again, the pronunciation is a piece of cake. You're stressing piece rather than cake. Next is a very, very old idiom, kill two birds with one stone. What this means is to accomplish two goals with one action. And this actually comes from Greek mythology. It is thousands of years old. And the story of Icarus, where they killed a bird with one stone, but they were able to get the feathers, that's one goal, and to build wings to fly out of a cave. That's another goal. But a good way to remember this is just think of something in your everyday simple life and think of one action that you take that achieves two different goals. So let's get a real question and I will use this idiom in the answer. Yes, I actually bought my wife a diamond ring last Christmas. So my wife's birthday is in November and Christmas is obviously in December. So I decided to kill two birds with one stone and buy one present for her birthday and Christmas. And she was very happy with that because she got one nice expensive ring rather than two less expensive gifts. A common mistake that we see with this one is to use kill in its present simple form rather than killed, K-I-L-L-E-D, in its past form. So if you're talking about the past, just like I did in that question or that answer, I used killed two birds with one stone, not kill two birds with one stone. You could also say I decided to kill two birds with one stone, or I chose to kill two birds with one stone. Just make sure that you're not taking the idiom and inserting it into the sentence without thinking about tense, without thinking about grammar. The next idiom is to let the cat out of the bag. To let the cat out of the bag is to reveal a secret, often by mistake. Where does this come from? Well, think about it. If you had a cat in a bag and it was let out of the bag, would it be easy to put that cat back into the bag? It would be very, very difficult. And this is the same with secrets. Once you reveal a secret, once it is out there into the world, you cannot take it back. So that is where to let the cat out of the bag comes from. If you count watches as jewelry, then yes. For my last birthday, my 40th birthday, my wife bought me a very special watch that I've been looking at and desiring for many, many years. The funny story about that is that my credit card and my wife's credit card are the same. So whenever my wife bought it, it pinged on my phone and I got an alert from my favorite watch boutique, and it was the exact amount of money that was for this watch, because I've been looking at this watch for ages. So the phone kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, but it was still a very nice gift and a nice surprise. The pronunciation of this is to stress or emphasize cat and bag. Let the cat out of the bag. Let the cat out of the bag. Common mistake that we see with this one is again missing out the articles. Let cat out of bag. You shouldn't take the idiom and then say it.
Khi các bạn đặt tay lên miệng, gần miệng và phát âm này thì chúng ta sẽ thấy được hơi bật ra vào lòng bàn tay của chúng.
Ôi mọi người ơi, mình vừa mới săn được khóa học online C để phát âm từ A đến Z hoàn toàn miễn phí luôn nhá.
Partly. You shouldn't use it incorrectly. A lot of students believe that if you just use idioms, and it doesn't matter if you use them correctly or not, you're going to get bonus points and you're going to get a high score. Again, if you use it incorrectly, you're lowering your score, not improving your score. The next idiom is don't put all your eggs in one basket. What this means is don't concentrate all of your resources or all of your effort into one single area in order to minimize risk. Where does this come from? Well, quite literally, if you had lots of chickens, lots of hens that were laying eggs, and you put all of your eggs into one basket, if you drop the basket, all of your eggs would be destroyed. We often use this to talk about our careers or work or investment strategy. For example, don't put all of your money into one stock. Don't put all your eggs into one basket. Put them into many, many different places, and then you're minimizing risk. It's basically about diversification. Probably not, because with the developments in AI recently, I don't think there are going to be IELTS teachers or even any teachers in the future. I think it would be very foolish for me to put all my eggs in one basket and just hope for the best and hope that IELTS and teaching lasts forever. But honestly, I don't think it will. The next idiom is once in a blue moon, which means it happens rarely. So you're talking about frequency, you're talking about how often something happens, and this thing happens rarely. Probably less than once a year. This is quite a literal idiom because literally it is rare to have a blue moon, but it does happen sometimes. This refers to, I think it happens once every 3 years or once every 2 or 3 years, you will have 2 moons in one calendar month. So once in a blue moon means something that doesn't happen very often. I used to go out nearly every night, but since I've had kids, it's really once in a blue moon. Most of my friends have either settled down with kids like me or they have moved away. So it's quite rare to have an occasion where a group of friends are all together at the same time. Sometimes at Christmas, when a lot of our friends visit Ireland during the Christmas period, or in the summertime when a lot of our friends have time off, I might go out, but it is quite a rare occasion these days. A common mistake that we see with once in a blue moon is trying to use it when it's not really appropriate to use it. A lot of students have been taught that if you use this idiom and it's really easy to use because it's talking about frequency, which is quite a basic function of English, that it will automatically bump your score. It's kind of like easy points. Students will insert this in unusual situations. Remember, you're only using it when the examiner asks you, how often do you do that? This might come up in part 1, it might come up in part 2, it might come up in part 3, but probably part 1. But if you don't get a question, how often do you do something, you don't have to use it. You won't get a lower score because you didn't use once in a blue moon. Only use it when you can use it and when you are actually talking about something that happens very, very rarely, like once every few years. The next one, I'm going to give you 2 idioms in one: burn the midnight oil and burn the candle at both ends. They have similar meanings, but are slightly different. So I'm going to answer a question and use both of them in the same answer. So burn the midnight oil is talking about things that are difficult. You're working hard on something. You are literally sitting up at midnight working on something. So we would often talk about work or studying, and burning the midnight oil, that means that you're working very, very hard at something. It doesn't have to be at nighttime, it just means that you are working very, very hard on something. And where does this come from? Well, before electricity, our main source of light would have been oil lamps. So you would have lit an oil lamp and used that oil. So if you were burning the midnight oil, it means that you weren't sleeping. It means that you were working at midnight, meaning you're working very hard, burning the midnight oil. Now, to burn the candle at both ends has a similar meaning, but slightly different. Burning the midnight oil doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It isn't negative per se. It's quite positive. You're working hard on something. Burning the candle at both ends means that you're working too much. You are exhausting yourself. Now, where does this come from? It actually comes from France, where they would, like everywhere else, use candles for light. But if you were an aristocrat, if you were very, very rich, you wouldn't burn the candle on one end, you would turn the candle horizontal and you would light both ends. And what this meant was that you were wasteful, that you were rich and you were just wasteful for waste's sake. But over the years, the meaning has changed to mean that you are working too hard and you are exhausting yourself. It's often used in the context of people who work very hard, so they spend a lot of time and energy in work, and then they party too much after. So it's, typical lawyer, for example, or a banker who is working very, very hard all day and then going out all night. They're burning the candle at both ends and they're going to exhaust themselves. Yes, I used to burn the candle at both ends. I had a very much work hard, play hard attitude because I was a lawyer. Lawyers are expected to work 80 to 100 hours a week, but we would often go out to bars and restaurants after work to blow off steam and to de-stress, which isn't really sustainable. Now I do still burn the midnight oil. I work very, very hard on my career, but you're more likely to find me tucked up in bed by 9 p.m. than to be out partying. The next idiom is at the drop of a hat. And this means to do something quickly, immediately, and without any hesitation. So without even thinking about it, without debating it in your mind, you just do it. Where does this come from? Well, many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago, everybody wore hats. If you look at pictures from a long time ago, you'll see that everyone, well, in this country anyway, wore a hat. And if people were going to fight or run a race or compete in some way, what people would do is they would take their hat off, and when they dropped their hat, that was the sign that the fight was going to begin or the race was about to begin. So people would drop their hat, and you started immediately without thinking about it. We actually rent our home. We could afford to buy a home, but we really value our independence and freedom. If you own a home, you're kind of stuck in that location because it can take a very long time to sell that home. But if you rent, you can move anywhere at the drop of a hat. The next idiom is cry over spilt milk. And this means not to waste time thinking about something, thinking negative thoughts about something that you cannot change, that has already happened. Where does this come from? Literally, if you spill milk, is there any point in crying about spilling milk? No, you can't put it back into the bottle. You can't change that scenario. The thing I dislike most about my job is dealing with people who only focus on the negative, especially when they are given negative feedback. That could be students, that could be employees, but people who make mistakes and don't learn from them. So for example, I give a lot of feedback on student essays, and some students see mistakes and they're like, great, now I know what my mistakes are and I can improve. Other students will just cry about it for days and they'll cry about it for weeks. They're like, I'm going to fail. It's like, there's no point crying over spilt milk. You made the mistake, now learn from it. The next idiom is you can't judge a book by its cover. This means that you should not judge people or things based on their appearance. Normally people, but can also include things. The origin of this is quite obvious. If you go into a bookshop, you will see lots of covers of books, but you actually need to read the book to judge it. You can't go in and say, I don't like that book, I think it will be terrible, based on the cover, because you actually have to read it to understand it. And we apply this to people. You can't judge a person based on their appearance. Very rarely, actually, because I'm a firm believer in you can't judge a book by its cover, and we should judge people not on what clothes they wear and their appearance, but by their character and the things that come out of their mouth. My wife firmly disagrees with this because she says someone who gets millions of views on YouTube shouldn't be wearing the same shirt every day. So she does encourage me to go and buy new clothes, but I do it begrudgingly. The next one is don't count your chickens before they hatch, another chicken idiom. And this means don't assume something will be successful or something will happen until it actually occurs. So you shouldn't assume that watching this video and using these idioms is going to guarantee a band 9. You should actually go and do the test and see if you get a band 9. Don't count your chickens. Now the full version of this idiom is don't count your chickens before they hatch, but English speakers normally just say don't count your chickens. You can use either of them in the test, but I think it's just simpler and easier to remember and use the shorter form, don't count your chickens. Now this actually comes from Aesop's fables about a milkmaid. This milkmaid was going to use milk to make butter, and then she was going to sell the butter to buy eggs, and then she was going to hatch the eggs and raise chickens, and then sell the chickens to buy a new dress. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. She didn't get her dress, so don't count your chickens. I prefer to buy luxury watches than jewelry. I'm not sure if you could count a luxury watch as jewelry, but the thing about jewelry is like diamond rings, necklaces, things like that. Often as soon as you buy them, as soon as you walk out of the jewelers, they lose value. Whereas many of the watches that I've purchased have actually gone up in value. I don't want to count my chickens, but if I were to sell these watches, I probably would make a lot more money on them than I paid for them. So that's why I prefer luxury timepieces over simple jewelry. The next idiom is to go the extra mile, and this means to put more effort or to work harder than what is required. So for example, instead of making an IELTS idioms video where I just say all the idioms and go through them quickly, I go the extra mile and talk about the origin and give you example sentences. This is actually a biblical reference from the Sermon on the Mount. And in the Bible, it says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. And many people interpret this as you should always do more than is required of you. My wife does the vast majority of the cooking, not because she's necessarily a better cook, but the thing I love about my wife is in whatever she does, she goes the extra mile. So if I was cooking steak, I would just cook the steak and eat it with a little bit of bread. But my wife will have like 3 different sauces and balsamic vinegar and 2 different olive oils and 4 different types of potato. She really does go the extra mile when it comes to cooking in our house. The next idiom is raining cats and dogs. This is very useful because it is used to describe the weather, and the weather will often come up during part 1 or part 2 or part 3. and it describes very, very heavy rain. To rain cats and dogs. Now there's a bit of a debate about where this comes from, and it's quite unusual, but the one that I find that helps you remember it and is a very vivid image is back in the day, many, many years ago, countries and cities didn't have the same drainage that we have these days. And when it would rain hard, when it would rain heavy, the city streets would flood. What are the most common pets in most countries? Cats and dogs. So those cats and dogs would actually drown, and whenever the storm was over, people would go into the streets and there would be cats and dogs lying lifeless all over the place. They had drowned. It's not a very nice image, but you'll definitely remember it. Yes and no. Where I live is one of the most beautiful places in the world. We're spoiled for choice in terms of outdoor activities and beautiful places. Like on our doorstep, we have beaches, forests, lakes, mountains. But unfortunately, it's Ireland, so it's normally raining cats and dogs, so you don't really get to enjoy it. A big mistake that I see with this one is getting the cats and dogs mixed up and saying dogs and cats. When students don't really learn this properly and just see a list of idioms, they go into the test and they're like, it was raining dogs and cats. A native English speaker or someone with a very high level of English will spot this immediately. And it is basically you holding up a sign saying, I'm not very good at English. So make sure you use it properly. I also see students using the wrong tense of rain. So it rained cats and dogs if you're talking about the past, to talk about something that normally happens. So it's normally raining cats and dogs, or it rains cats and dogs. You need to understand the verb tense of the word rain and use it correctly. Again, if you're saying it's raining cats and dogs yesterday, that's incorrect, and it's a big flag to the examiner that you don't really know what you're talking about. The next idiom is to throw in the towel. So a towel that you use to dry yourself, that you after a shower. And this means to stop something that is either very, very difficult or has become impossible, to throw in the towel. And this comes from boxing. So if guys are boxing and one boxer is getting so beat up that it is impossible for them to continue, continuing is not going to result in victory. It is going to result in them getting badly injured. Their corner, their trainer, will throw a towel into the ring. And whenever a towel is thrown into the ring, the referee stops it immediately to throw in the towel. As you can tell from looking at me, no, I don't have a very healthy diet. I do try. I normally get up in the morning and have a healthy breakfast and have a healthy lunch. But it's so easy just to throw in the towel when you get home after a hard day's work and your wife has a beautiful meal prepared, there's a bottle of wine on the table, and your kids' half-eaten chocolate is lying all around the kitchen. So I do quite well most of the day and then fail in the evenings. The next idiom is cross that bridge when you come to it. People often say we will or we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, or I will. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And what this means is to deal with a problem or a situation when it actually occurs in the future, not to worry about something that has not happened yet. So imagine you are out for a walk and someone starts talking about a bridge that is miles away and they're worrying about crossing that bridge. You would say, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. So where this comes from is, many, many years ago, bridges weren't free and they weren't reliable. So often people would collect tolls, collect taxes to cross a bridge, or the bridge wasn't very sturdy and crossing that bridge could result in you falling off or the bridge collapsing and you dying. So it's talking about an unpleasant or difficult situation that is coming up in the future, but you shouldn't worry about that. We'll worry about that when we get there. Let's just focus on the here and now. It's not something I really like to think about because in the back of my mind, I know IELTS teachers and all educators are doomed because AI is going to replace them. Like, why would a student hire a human that is not as good as a machine that can do it at half the price or a fraction of the price and do it much more effectively? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I don't think it's that far away. But in the meantime, I'm just going to enjoy teaching for as long as I can. Next, we have two Roman idioms, or idioms that originate from the city of Rome. Rome obviously was one of the greatest empires that the world has ever seen, and it has a huge influence on the English language and a huge number of languages to this day. And the first one is Rome wasn't built in a day. And this means that significant accomplishments, so to accomplish something big, a big goal, takes time. It takes a long time to achieve something significant. So back in the day, many, many years ago, Rome was the greatest city in the world, but it was built over centuries. It took a very, very, very long time to build Rome into the greatest city in the world. And we often use this when someone is trying to get us to do something too quickly. So if somebody said to me, you need to have the best, biggest YouTube channel in the world, well, Rome wasn't built in a day. We'll do it one video at a time. It's often used as well to console someone who is feeling bad about not achieving something. So, if my little boy was like, we lost a football match, I'm not very good at football. Rome wasn't built in a day. You will get better at football, but you won't get better at football right now. You need to keep working consistently hard into the future, and then you will be a footballing superstar, which he wants to be. The thing I hate about social media is the fact that these companies have so much power to change their systems and change their algorithms, but they decide not to for money. So to give you an example from my work and my job, to become a famous IELTS YouTuber is actually quite easy. All you have to do is come up with some clickbait titles like hacks and tricks and predictions and things like that, and put a pretty girl on the thumbnail. But that doesn't mean that the person making that video knows anything about IELTS. It just means that they know how to trick the algorithm. I understand Rome wasn't built in a day,
How to get the most of Grammarly free.
It's Kayla on behalf of Grammarly to tell you all about the free version.
It takes time to fix platforms and change algorithms, but these are, sometimes trillion-dollar companies. If they wanted to get these people off their platform, they could, but they decide not to because popular is more important than, educating the public properly. The next one is when in Rome, do what the Romans do. But this is often shortened to when in Rome. So you'll very rarely hear native English speakers say, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. Just say, when in Rome. And what this means is that when you are visiting a foreign place, when you are a tourist or a visitor in a country that you're not from, you should respect the customs and respect the religion, the culture, the customs of that place. And this comes from the Catholic faith, where Milan and Rome had different days for fasting. So in many religions, you have fast days where you don't eat anything. And in Milan, it was on a Sunday, but in Rome, it was on a Saturday. So they were talking about, when do you fast? Do you fast on a Saturday or fast on a Sunday? When in Rome, you should respect their culture and you should fast on their fast day. When you're home, do it normally. No, I actually hate it, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable. I'm from Ireland, and in Ireland, it is quite rare for someone to take your photo. And if they want to take your photo, it is rude to just take it without asking you. So it's customary just to say, do you mind if I take a photo? And if somebody says, yes, you can take it, but if they say no, you should definitely not take it. My wife, who is from Vietnam, in Vietnam, they have a very, very different culture. They are taking photos all of the time, and they will think nothing of just taking a photo of you. And if I get angry with someone for taking a photo, they'll think that I'm the problem and I'm being rude. So, when in Rome. So now you know all of these different idioms that Band 9 students use. Does that mean that you can use them in the IELTS test and automatically get a higher score? Yes and no. And this is the most important point in the video. If you don't watch this bit, you probably will mess up your test, fail, waste a lot of money. Please do watch it. So what I'm about to say is very different from most IELTS YouTubers and most IELTS teachers. So let's just look at data and facts. None of this is my opinion. All the things I'm about to tell you are straight facts. So when we analysed all of our Band 9 students who got Band 9 in the real IELTS speaking test, what were the number of idioms that they actually used? And the number is quite shocking, 1.2 on average. This means that many of them didn't use idioms at all. Most of them maybe used 1 or 2, but there was quite a variation. And it was quite rare for students to use, say, more than 4 or 5. Why is this? And why are many of you, typing in the comments right now, that is wrong, you must use idioms to get a higher score? Let me explain. So if you go to the official band descriptors for IELTS speaking, you'll find them online. What it says for lexical resource, which is basically a fancy way of saying vocabulary, for Band 7 is, uses some less common and idiomatic vocabulary and shows some awareness of style and collocation with some inappropriate choices. So what you'll hear from most IELTS YouTubers is you must use idioms to get a 7 or above. And this is a misconception. It is a misunderstanding of the official marking criteria. Most IELTS YouTubers have not been examiners and they don't really know what these actually mean. Let's look up the dictionary definition for idiomatic. What does idiomatic actually mean? Because most YouTubers and most students think that idiomatic means idioms. Just use lots of idioms, you'll get a Band 7, 8 or 9. Does it actually mean that? Well, if we look at Cambridge Dictionary, the definition of idiomatic is containing expressions that are natural and correct. And this is what idiomatic actually means for the purposes of IELTS. Idiomatic means natural English. In other words, English that a native English speaker would use. Natural idiomatic expressions. It does contain idioms, but it also contains slang, phrasal verbs, informal words, colloquialisms, and many other forms of natural English. Because if you are studying English in school and you're just using textbooks, that is not the most natural English that you will hear. It's only when you move to a native English-speaking country and start copying these idiomatic phrases and expressions that you sound like a native English speaker. And that is what the examiners are listening out for. They're not listening for how many idioms did you use. They are listening to your whole performance and then thinking, are they using some idiomatic expressions or not? And that includes idioms, but it includes many, many other things. So have I just wasted your time with this lesson? You're telling us that you should learn these idioms, and then you're telling us not to learn these idioms. So let me tell you what we tell our VIP students. When we're teaching them vocabulary, we use something called the birthday cake analogy or the birthday cake method. If you think about a birthday cake, it looks very fancy and it looks very, very impressive. But if you think about the ingredients of a fancy looking birthday cake, they are the most basic foods, the most basic ingredients in the world. Things like milk, sugar, flour, water, butter. These are things that can be found in any shop in any country in the world. They are simple, they are basic. Most birthday cakes are made up 98, 97% of these simple basic ingredients. But the sprinkles on top make it look fancy. That's the exact approach that we teach our VIP students. 97-98% of the words that you use are going to be simple, everyday, basic words, because that is how the English language functions. That is how any language functions. Then you can use some high-level words, you could use some idioms, you could use some phrasal verbs, you could sprinkle those on top, but it's going to actually be quite rare when you use them. The examiner is not looking for you to use them in every single sentence. Now, if you go back in this video and listen to my answers, even though I tried to use idioms in every single answer, if you broke down the words of all of those answers, 90-95% of the words that I used are simple, basic, everyday words. Remember the birthday cake analogy. So it is great having idioms in your toolkit, and you can use them appropriately and accurately, but you don't have to use them. You know, if you were building a house, would you rather have a massive toolkit that allows you to do many, many things, or would you just like to have a hammer? Teaching you these idioms is about expanding the vocabulary you know how to use. And the key word there is use. You are not learning vocabulary. You are learning to use vocabulary effectively. Please, please, please do not do two things. Number one, do not memorize these idioms and try and insert them, force them into every single answer. You are going to fail because it will be inappropriate, you'll use them too much, and you will use them incorrectly. You know, the words will be incorrect, the collocations will be incorrect, and the pronunciation probably will be incorrect. Try to incorporate them into your everyday use. Of the English language, use them properly and use them appropriately. That is the difference between a Band 6 student and a Band 9 student. The second thing you should not do is learn lists of idioms. The reason why this is a very, very long video and why I'm talking a lot and explaining all of this to you and why I didn't just give you a list of idioms and just rhyme them off and show you examples was to demonstrate to you that you should use them appropriately. I could not take those idioms and do a speaking test and use all of them in the speaking test. In fact, when I did the speaking test, I got a Band 9 because I'm a native English speaker, of course, but I used 0 idioms. That is because I'm not being judged on my use of idioms alone. I'm being judged on all of the words that I'm using, not just the fancy high-level idioms. Well done for making it this far in the video. By this stage, you should be ready to start taking some practice questions and start practicing at home. And we're going to give you more than 1,000 of them in the following part of this video. But not only that, we're not just going to give you a bunch of questions. We're going to show you how to use practice questions at home to really, really improve your score. So don't just skip ahead in the video and find the link and download all the questions and start practicing. watch the next part of the video that is going to show you what not to do, how not to practice, and how to practice. Kind of simple do's and don'ts for practicing at home. It's really going to accelerate your speaking ability and improve your score in a much shorter period of time. Let's start off with the don'ts. These are things that you should not do, and these are things that band 7, 8, and 9 students do not do when they're using IELTS speaking questions. Number 1, don't get overwhelmed. Sometimes when we give students hundreds and hundreds of questions, they get completely overwhelmed and they think that their job is to analyze and look at and practice every single question. And they need to be aware of all the different questions. You do not need to do that. Don't look at hundreds of questions and think that you must have an answer for all of them or be aware of all of them. Just use them in the way that we're going to show you in this video. So important, don't get overwhelmed. Number 2, don't worry if you see a topic in there that you're not an expert in. Remember that it is a speaking test. It is not a knowledge test or an intelligence test. Number 3, you should not try to prepare answers and memorize them and try to improve your speaking score in that way. IELTS examiners are trained to spot this, and they can easily spot it, and what they will do is they will ask you other questions that you were not prepared for, and they will base your score on those unprepared questions. Because IELTS is not a test of memorization, because it is testing communication. You don't use memorization when you're communicating with people in any language, so don't try to prepare answers for any of them. Number 4, don't try and anticipate the different topics that come up. If you go through all of these, you will see that there are no common topics. You could be asked about anything. So you'll see lots of things online about YouTube videos saying these are the common topics that might come up, or here are the predicted topics that might come up. This is just to get you to click on those videos. None of those are actually real, so don't try and do that. This is a big one. Don't compare your performance with so-called band 9 students that you find on YouTube. This is going to damage your confidence, and it is also highly misleading. Now, not to bash any other channels, I'm not doing that, or I'm not going to mention specific channels, but just looking at those, band 9 mock speaking tests or band 8 or whatever they are, the vast majority of them either are not actually band 9 or band 8, or the people giving feedback are not real teachers. Those videos are incredibly popular, so what's happening is companies are hiring fake teachers and then hiring models and actresses to make IELTS videos about speaking, but none of them are accurate. So if you're comparing yourself to those people, it's not a fair comparison, and if you're watching too many of those videos, you might be getting bad advice from unqualified teachers. And the last don't is something that a lot of students don't really think about. Don't take these questions and look constantly for feedback. So some students, what they do is they'll look at the questions and then they'll ask their teachers or some online services to just constantly do mock speaking tests and constantly do feedback tests with them and give them lots and lots of feedback. Those things are important. You should be practicing, you should be getting feedback, but the real improvement comes after you get feedback. So if a teacher gives you feedback, for example, on pronunciation or fluency or grammar or vocabulary, doing another mock speaking test is not actually going to improve those things at all. There is such a thing as too much feedback. So don't take these and just do lots and lots and lots of feedback sessions. Work on improving the things you need to work on, and you're going to see far more improvement if you work on your weaknesses. Okay, let's get into the things that band 7, 8, and 9 students do when they are using these practice questions. Okay, so Chris here. This is how you find the article with all of the practice questions in it. I'm going to show you how to access them in 3 steps. So step 1, what you're going to do is you're going to go to Google and you're going to type in IELTS speaking. Once you have IELTS speaking up in Google, you're going to scroll through all the different websites and go to IELTS Advantage. So it might be on the first page, it might be on the second page, probably be in and around the middle of the first page. You're just going to click on IELTS speaking, how to get a band 7 or above, IELTS Advantage. You're going to click on that. That's step 1. One of the big things successful students do is they treat each part of the speaking test separately. So part 1, part 2, and part 3 are very, very different. Different types of questions, different types of answers, and the examiners are thinking about different things when they are assessing you. So what you should not do is just take some part 1 questions, a part 2 question, some part 3 questions, and then try and answer them all in the same way. Band 7, 8, and 9 students don't do that. Keep watching this video, but at the end of the video, I'll give you some links so that you can understand the differences between the different parts. It's very, very important. Number 2, Band 8 and 9 students understand the marking criteria. It is far more important that you use these questions to understand the marking criteria than just to go through all of these questions. Use the questions to test yourself, to practice, to think about your performance and think about how are you doing in relation to the marking criteria. That's the only thing that matters, because that's the only thing that the examiners are thinking about on more improvement if you work on your weaknesses. Okay, let's get into the things that Band 7, 8, and 9 students do when they are using these practice questions. Okay, so Chris here. This is how you find the article with all of the practice questions in it. I'm going to show you how to access them in 3 steps. So step 1, what you're going to do is you're going to go to Google and you're going to type in IELTS speaking. Once you have IELTS speaking up in Google, you're going to scroll through all the different websites and go to IELTS Advantage. So it might be on the first page, it might be on the second page, probably be in and around the middle of the first page. You're just going to click on IELTS speaking, how to get a band 7 or above, IELTS Advantage. You're going to click on that. That's step 1. One of the big things successful students do is they treat each part of the speaking test separately. So part 1, part 2, and part 3 are very, very different. Different types of questions, different types of answers, and the examiners are thinking about different things when they are assessing you. So what you should not do is just take some part 1 questions, a part 2 question, some part 3 questions, and then try and answer them all in the same way. Band 7, 8, and 9 students don't do that. Keep watching this video, but at the end of the video, I'll give you some links so that you can understand the differences between the different parts. It's very, very important. Number 2, Band 8 and 9 students understand the marking criteria. It is far more important that you use these questions to understand the marking criteria than just to go through all of these questions. Use the questions to test yourself, to practice, to think about your performance and think about how are you doing in relation to the marking criteria. That's the only thing that matters, because that's the only thing that the examiners are thinking about on test day. And we'll show you how to do that when we give you the VIP technique at the end. Number 3, get your speaking checked at least once by a real IELTS professional. Now, I'm not saying that because I want you to buy our services. We're normally completely sold out. I'm saying this because it's anything. So you'll see lots of things online about YouTube videos saying these are the common topics that might come up, or here are the predicted topics that might come up. This is just to get you to click on those videos. None of those are actually real, so don't try and do that. This is a big one. Don't compare your performance with so-called Band 9 students that you find on YouTube. This is going to damage your confidence, and it is also highly misleading. Now, not to bash any other channels, I'm not doing that, or I'm not going to mention specific channels, but just looking at those, Band 9 mock speaking tests or Band 8 or whatever they are, the vast majority of them either are not actually Band 9 or Band 8, or the people giving feedback are not real teachers. Those videos are incredibly popular, so what's happening is companies are hiring fake teachers and then hiring models and actresses to make IELTS videos about speaking, but none of them are accurate. So if you're comparing yourself to those people, it's not a fair comparison, and if you're watching too many of those videos, you might be getting bad advice from unqualified teachers. And the last don't is something that a lot of students don't really think about. Don't take these questions and look constantly for feedback. So some students, what they do is they'll look at the questions and then they'll ask their teachers or some online services to just constantly do mock speaking tests and constantly do feedback tests with them and give them lots and lots of feedback. Those things are important. You should be practicing, you should be getting feedback, but the real improvement comes after you get feedback. So if a teacher gives you feedback, for example, on pronunciation or fluency or grammar or vocabulary, doing another mock speaking test is not actually going to improve those things at all. There is such a thing as too much feedback. So don't take these and just do lots and lots and lots of feedback sessions. Work on improving the things that you need to work on, and you're going to see far more improvement if you work on your weaknesses. Okay, let's get into the things that Band 7, 8, and 9 students do when they are using these practice questions.
Okay, so Chris here. This is how you find the article with all of the practice questions in it. I'm going to show you how to access them in 3 steps. So step 1, what you're going to do is you're going to go to Google and you're going to type in IELTS speaking. Once you have IELTS speaking up in Google, you're going to scroll through all the different websites and go to IELTS Advantage. So it might be on the first page, it might be on the second page, probably be in and around the middle of the first page. You're just going to click on IELTS speaking, how to get a Band 7 or above, IELTS Advantage. You're going to click on that. That's step 1.
One of the big things successful students do is they treat each part of the speaking test separately. So part 1, part 2, and part 3 are very, very different. Different types of questions, different types of answers, and the examiners are thinking about different things when they are assessing you. So what you should not do is just take some part 1 questions, a part 2 question, some part 3 questions, and then try and answer them all in the same way. Band 7, 8, and 9 students don't do that. Keep watching this video, but at the end of the video, I'll give you some links so that you can understand the differences between the different parts. It's very, very important. Number 2, Band 8 and 9 students understand the marking criteria. It is far more important that you use these questions to understand the marking criteria than just to go through all of these questions. Use the questions to test yourself, to practice, to think about your performance and think about how are you doing in relation to the marking criteria. That's the only thing that matters, because that's the only thing that the examiners are thinking about on test day. And we'll show you how to do that when we give you the VIP technique at the end. Number 3, get your speaking checked at least once by a real IELTS professional. Now, I'm not saying that because I want you to buy our services. We're normally completely sold out. I'm saying this because it is so easy to spot if you're a real IELTS professional, an ex-examiner. It's so easy to spot little things that the student is doing that will lead to failure. And it's so easy to fix these things. Now, many of you don't want to spend any money on this, but it is a lot cheaper than failing your test. And the difference between failing your test and doing a mock speaking test with a real professional is the real test costs a lot more and you get no feedback. If you do a mock speaking test with a real professional, it's much, much cheaper, and they are going to give you real actionable feedback. You're going to know what's going on, what your weaknesses are, what your score is, and how to improve your score. But please be careful. Most people calling themselves ex-examiners are not really ex-examiners, and your local IELTS teacher who has very little experience and has never been an examiner probably will not give you very good feedback. It is better to find a source that you trust, that you know that they're real ex-examiners and they really know what they're talking about. In general, the more expensive ones are going to be more reliable, the cheaper ones are going to be unreliable. We do provide that service, but we're normally sold out. If you want more information, get in touch with us. But before you say, oh my God, he's only making this video to try and make money from us, I'm going to show you how you can get real feedback, accurate feedback for free at home at zero cost. This is the same technique we give our VIP students. It is extremely effective, but you're going to need a few things. So we're going to go through it step by step. Step 2, it should bring you to this page on our website, IELTS Speaking in 2023. This page has a lot of information on it. What you're going to do is you're going to scroll down, and you're going to keep scrolling, you're going to keep scrolling, you're going to keep scrolling until you get to IELTS Speaking topics. Now let's go back to the video and I'll show you how to click on the article you need in step 3. First of all, you're going to need practice questions, real practice questions. We're going to show you how to access those at the end of the video so you've got those. The next thing is you're going to need either a phone or a laptop. You're going to need some kind of electronic device that will record your voice. Most laptops, most phones will be able to do this. Please don't ask, should you use a laptop or should you use a phone? It doesn't matter. Just pick something that you have that you can use to record your voice. The next thing you need to do is download some kind of recording app or program to your phone or to your laptop. Now, all you have to do is go into your App Store or Google. I'm not going to name specific apps because they change all the time. And it's so easy for you to just find this yourself. The next thing you want to do is sign up for a service that automatically transcribes your voice. So let me give you some examples, but again, these change over time. Do your own research. So on an Apple phone, so it might be on the first page, it might be on the second page, probably be in and around the middle of the first page. You're just going to click on IELTS Speaking, how to get a band 7 or above, IELTS Advantage. You're going to click on that. That's step 1. One of the big things successful students do is they treat each part of the speaking test separately. So part 1, part 2, and part 3 are very, very different. Different types of questions, different types of answers, and the examiners are thinking about different things when they are assessing you. So what you should not do is just take some part 1 questions, a part 2 question, some part 3 questions, and then try and answer them all in the same way. Band 7, 8, and 9 students don't do that. Keep watching this video, but at the end of the video, I'll give you some links so that you can understand the differences between the different parts. It's very, very important. Number 2, Band 8 and 9 students understand the marking criteria. It is far more important that you use these questions to understand the marking criteria than just to go through all of these questions. Use the questions to test yourself, to practice, to think about your performance and think about how are you doing in relation to the marking criteria. That's the only thing that matters because that's the only thing that the examiners are thinking about on test day. And we'll show you how to do that when we give you the VIP technique at the end. Number 3, get your speaking checked at least once by a real IELTS professional. Now, I'm not saying that because I want you to buy our services. We're normally completely sold out. I'm saying this because it is so easy to spot if you're a real IELTS professional, an ex-examiner. It's so easy to spot little things that the student is doing that will lead to failure. And it's so easy to fix these things. Now, many of you don't want to spend any money on this, but it is a lot cheaper than failing your test. And the difference between failing your test and doing a mock speaking test with a real professional is the real test costs a lot more and you get no feedback. If you do a mock speaking test with a real professional, it's much, much cheaper and they are going to give you real actionable feedback. You're going to know what's going on, what your weaknesses are, what your score is, and how to improve your score. But please be careful. Most people calling themselves ex-examiners are not really ex-examiners. And your local IELTS teacher who has very little experience and has never been an examiner probably will not give you very good feedback. It is better to find a source that you trust, that you know that they're real ex-examiners and they really know what they're talking about. In general, the more expensive ones are going to be more reliable, the cheaper ones are going to be unreliable. We do provide that service, but we're normally sold out. If you want more information, get in touch with us. But before you say, oh my God, he's only making this video to try and make money from us, I'm going to show you how you can get real feedback, accurate feedback for free at home at zero cost. This is the same technique we give our VIP students. It is extremely effective, but you're going to need a few things. So we're going to go through it step by step. Step 2, it should bring you to this page on our website, IELTS Speaking in 2023. This page has a lot of information on it. What you're going to do is you're going to scroll down and you're going to keep scrolling. You're going to keep scrolling. You're going to keep scrolling until you get to IELTS Speaking topics. Now let's go back to the video and I'll show you how to click on the article you need in step 3. First of all, you're going to need practice questions, real practice questions. We're going to show you how to access those at the end of the video so you've got those. The next thing is you're going to need either a phone or a laptop. You're going to need some kind of electronic device that will record your voice. Most laptops, most phones will be able to do this. Please don't ask, should you use a laptop or should you use a phone? It doesn't matter. Just pick something that you have that you can use to record your voice. The next thing you need to do is download some kind of recording app or program to your phone or to your laptop. Now, all you have to do is go into your App Store or Google. I'm not going to name specific apps because they change all the time. And it's so easy for you to just find this yourself. The next thing you want to do is sign up for a service that automatically transcribes your voice. So let me give you some examples, but again, these change over time. Do your own research. So on an Apple phone, in the notes function, you can just press the transcribe button and it will transcribe what you say. There's also a service that you can use on your computer called otter.ai. They have a free version of that software that will record your voice and transcribe it. But as I said before, do your own research, find a tool and you'll be able to get this done. But you do need one to record your voice so you can listen back and one to transcribe it. There might be some apps out there that do both. If there are, put it in the comments, let people know what you found and help each other. Okay, so that's all the tech setup done. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to pick one part of the test, either part 1, part 2, or part 3. Don't do a full test, just pick one part and focus on one thing at a time. So for part 1, you're going to use about 9 questions. Part 2, you're only going to use 1 question. And for part 3, you're going to pick 3 or 4 questions. Make sure that you don't study these questions. We want to recreate the real test as much as possible. Don't look at easy questions and try and prepare answers, all right? Just pick questions from the list. Don't look at them. Don't study them. Just pick them. Look at each question and answer it as if an examiner is asking you that question. So read each question and answer it as if you are in the real test. If you mess up, don't worry about it. This is just practice. Next, I want you to download the official marking criteria. I'll put a link below, but if you just Google speaking marking criteria, it should come up on Google as well. What you're going to do is you're going to listen back and you're going to think about your performance. You're going to read the marking criteria and think about which band you should get based on your own performance. If you don't understand the marking criteria, you don't understand the bands, I'll put a link at the end of the video that will show you in more detail what the bands mean. As you're listening back, think about your biggest weaknesses. So if you were, you couldn't really answer the questions, fluency is an issue. If you can't understand anything that you say, pronunciation is probably an issue. Or if you're making lots of vocabulary mistakes or grammar mistakes, that's your biggest issue. The great thing about this technique is when you're in the real test, you're unaware of the mistakes that you are making, but when you're listening back and just focusing on your mistakes and focusing on your performance, you'll be able to pick out things that you were completely unaware of, and you'll be able to fix those things. And that takes us on to our next point. You're going to look at the transcription, whatever service you used that will write out your answers, and you're going to analyze that in more detail. So the first thing you're going to analyze is, did you actually answer the question? Look at the question, look at the transcription. Did you actually answer the question? And did you develop your answer enough? You can also analyze your fluency. If there are lots of ums and ahs and pauses in the transcription, if you're jumping around a lot, then fluency might be an issue for you. If the transcription cannot understand most of the words, like the words are completely different, then that is a pronunciation issue. You can also analyze your vocabulary. Did you repeat too many words? Are you trying to use words that you don't really understand? Did you struggle with that topic because of a limited vocabulary? And then with grammar, what you can do is you can put that transcript into something like Grammarly, for example, or there are lots of other options, and it will highlight all of the grammar mistakes that you made. And you'll be able to identify your key grammar mistakes. For example, if you are using the wrong article before every noun, you need to work on articles. So this technique is not actually about improving your speaking yet. This technique is to give you feedback. As I said before, feedback doesn't improve your speaking instantly, but what you do after does. So for example, if you look at the transcript and you messed up every article, being aware of that is just the first step. You're not going to magically improve your speaking by just being aware of that, but you will magically improve if you work on those things. And some of you watching right now might be thinking, well, that's a lot of work. Yes, it is, but it's a lot less work than going and watching a bunch of tips and tricks videos, believing that they're going to help you, and then failing the test over and over again and not knowing why. That is a lot of work. This is actually a lot less stressful because you will be in control and you can do it all for free at home at your own pace. Again, we're here to give you things that are actually going to improve your score, not tips and tricks that make you happy. So step 3, you should be here, IELTS speaking topics. You're going to scroll down and you will see a link, IELTS speaking topics, the ultimate guide. Click on that and it will give you access to all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions that you will need for your speaking practice. Well done, you made it to the last part of the video. So we're going to do something we've never done before. So you've probably seen that we do lots of mock speaking tests here in our studio, but this is the first time that we've brought a student back. So before we had this student who got a band 8, but I thought that she was actually capable of a much, much higher band, a band 9, which is a huge improvement. So she went through a lot of the same lessons in this video that you have just went through. And I want to show you the massive improvement that she made just by following the steps in this video. So without further ado, let's look and see if she did get her band 9. Let's start off by talking about exercise. How often do you exercise?
When you talk about exercise, I don't really exercise that much, but then I do other forms of exercise, if you can take that into the category exercise. So I like to dance, I like to do yoga, I like to go for a walk. So I'm sure that's included in exercise. So if you talk about that, I think every day, at least an hour. So yeah, I do like to take care of my body and I do like to invest in my body.
What's your favorite exercise?
So I think I'd like to say dance, because it's funny because it's mindless. You don't realize you're exercising.
When you're dancing, it's just 1 hour of catharsis. You're just going and sweating it out, and you don't realize that you worked out for an hour. So yeah, I think I'll say dance.
Are there any exercises you do not like?
I wouldn't say I don't like. I do like lifting weights, but it's not one of my favorite part of the exercise. It's something which I find monotonous, something which I find cumbersome, something which I find boring. So yes, lifting weights.
Do you prefer to exercise indoors or outdoors?
I think both. When the weather allows, then outdoors. But otherwise, I'm more of an indoor person. I don't mind doing yoga every single day in my room. I know like a lot of people don't enjoy that. They need an environment, they need a setup, they need to go to the gym, which is also indoors. But I do enjoy indoors, and I do enjoy just exercising in my home, in my room. And that being said, I also enjoy working out in outside facility as well. Like I like going for walks, I like going for a run. So yeah, I think both.
Now let's talk about weekends. How do you normally spend your weekends?
Weekends, I usually have more classes. I'm a yoga teacher, so my weekends are not a normal weekend for other people where they go out for lunches, dinners and celebrate. For me, weekends are more heavy on work. But if I can say that Monday is my weekend or Tuesday is my weekend, then I like to watch movies. I really like watching Netflix, and I like to spend time with my husband. I also like cooking, and that's the time which I get for myself. So yes, I think I like spending it in the house and really giving that time to myself and my husband.
Do you like to spend your weekends in your local area, or do you like to travel?
So it depends. It's both. If I have a lot of time to myself, in the sense if I have 2 days off or 3 days off, I like to go out on a vacation, like a mini trip. So I like to go out, probably do like a picnic, go out to a park, or maybe explore any other countryside, any other city. But if it's a short duration, if it's only a day, then probably spend it in the house, like I mentioned earlier.
Are there any interesting things to do in your local area on the weekends?
Yes, there are a lot of coffee shops. And there's a coffee shop right beneath my house, which is very popular in London. It's called Gale's. So yeah, there are a lot of nice places around my neighborhood. But I wouldn't say that I like going to those places because they're very familiar. I would like to go to places which are a little away. So I would like to travel a little bit and enjoy the entire journey of reaching a place. But yes, my neighborhood is also quite friendly and social.
Do you prefer to go out or stay in at the weekend?
So like I mentioned earlier, if it's a short weekend, if it's only a day and a half, then staying in is better for me. And because there are a lot of things that I need to finish, so I prefer staying in. But if it is a longer weekend, like in the sense that you also have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's a 3 days, then I like to probably step out and probably explore other neighborhood cities and towns and villages here.
Now let's talk about reading. What was your... Remember that it is a speaking test. It is not a knowledge test or an intelligence test. Number 3, you should not try to prepare answers